Hey guys, Coach Adam from TeamElitePhysique.com here with another bikini review. We have a good one for you. We have a two-part bikini review, two shows. We have the San Antonio Pro and we have the Hurricane Pro that happened this weekend. Congratulations to Ashlyn Little and Alexandria Ross. I am so excited that you guys won again. Alexandria qualified for the Olympia this year, and this is Ashlyn Little's fourth qualification this year. So she's won 4 pro shows this year. Congratulations to her. I think the only two people have more wins than her this year. I think Ivana and Ashley, of course, has more wins this year. And I think that Jourdain has 3 wins, if I'm correct, after last weekend's show. So those are the winners. And we call the Olympia quality control team right there. Since there's so many girls in the Olympia, when you pass 2 Olympia wins, you're part of the Olympia quality control team. So congrats to you girls for being in that exclusive group. So let's take a look at the placings. And at the Hurricane Pro, you had Erin Dennis, Alice Rocha, ABBI, Brittany Hamilton, and Ashlyn Little. You know, this show was no surprise to me. I actually called this on like writing boards before this show happened. And I knew Ashlyn was going to take this one. Brittany looks fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from Brittany, but Ashlyn is just on another level right now. And Brittany still has some time to catch up to that. But an amazing showing by Brittany. So going into Brittany, there's a couple things on Brittany. So first off, Brittany has really, really good lines, and that's why she's doing so well. She has all the muscle in the world that she needs to do great in bikini. But let's take a look at this front pose. When you see Brittany, really, really powerful shoulders. And I honestly think that that's the only thing that is hurting her, and it's the only thing that's going to hurt her at these bigger shows like at the Olympia. When you're at these smaller shows throughout the year where there's, maybe one top Olympian like an Ashlyn, or there's a smaller show where there's not any top Olympians, you're going to be able to see a lot more muscle in those shows. You're going to see a lot more muscular girls winning those shows because there's no one to really have that top 10 standard. Now, Ashlyn at one point was a top 10 Olympian, and so she has that, hey, that's that top 10 Olympia standard. How does she look next to her? Oh, Brittany's shoulders are a little bit too big. They really dwarf her shoulders, and she's creating too much in those shoulder lines, and it just kind of dwarfs her. And that's what happens. And you'll see these girls do really well throughout the year, and then they kind of fade at the Olympia. And you're like, why did she fade? She had so much more muscle than her. Well, she had so much muscle than her, and that's why she faded. So at the Olympia, I think that she's going to need to bring these shoulders down just a hair to be able to really hang with those girls. When you see these top girls, the Janets, the Laura Lees, the Ashleys, the Maureens, you're not seeing this much meat on the shoulders. That is a very big shoulder. Look at how deep the capping is on this shoulder. When you look at that actual shoulder capping, there is a crevice in between the shoulder and the bicep tricep where it is a full-on groove, and that is a full-on shoulder cap. They do not want to see full shoulder capping. She's going to win shows throughout the year. Her physique is super, super impressive. Her lines are God-given, amazing lines. Great glute fullness, and balance is not bad either, but I think her just a tiny bit smaller on everything, 5% smaller on her, and that is her top 10 Olympia physique. So she's right there. She's just pushing it a little bit too much, and I think that's where Ashlyn edged her out. From the back, there's not a whole lot to work on. Now I will say, when you're looking at her and you're looking at her pose from the back pose, she does have a little bit wider of a waist when you get her next to some of these girls, like when you get her next to Ashley from the back or an Ashlyn from the back. A Maureen or Issa from the back, you're going to see, she's a little bit wider in the waist. So of course, yes, she's going to have a little bit more size up top, but you need to have that size up top without so much grooves and detail in those shoulder capping, without being so much more powerful than everyone else around you. So she's made some improvements. I see the improvements from show to show. She's definitely better. She's not as, figure-y looking in the shoulders this time than she was the last time. So she's getting there. I think it's going to take her a little longer, and maybe by the Olympia time, she'll fully peak that physique and be right along the other top 10 Olympians and maybe even crack in. She has the lines for it. It's possible. She just needs to tame down on those shoulders just a hair. I think where the interesting talk on this show, I think that it was obvious that Ashlyn was going to win. I didn't see the scorecards. I would assume it was a perfect score, but looking at third and fourth place, I think was where the controversy comes in, at least for me. Looking at Alice Rocha and ABBI GAETANO, ABBI beat out Alice for third and fourth place. I don't know, again, where that scorecard was, but I don't, this is one that I'm going to disagree with. I don't see a way where ABBI's able to beat Alice on this day. I mean, when we look at just the waistlines, the detail, the pop of the glutes. When we look at like the front pose, the overall glute pop that Alice has, the roundness to her hamstrings, the flow, the shoulders. Remember, like if we're awarding Brittany Hamilton for having those shoulders second place, how is Alice with these shoulders losing to Abby here, right? When you look at the thickness of the waistline, Alice beats her here. So from the front, I think it's pretty much domination from the front pose, Alice over Abby, right? So I'm like, okay, how does this happen? Then we look at them from the back, and we look at Alice, and we look at Abby, and we look at a couple key differences. One, again, from the waistline, Alice is a clear winner on the waistline. On the ratios, the shoulder to waist ratio to hip ratio, again, Alice wins. On the tie-ins, Abby wins. On the overall like conditioning and pop on the legs from here down, Abby wins. From here all the way up, Alice wins. So I would have this switched. I think that one was a little bit of I think the judges were probably talking about that one. I don't know exactly what was the deciding factor there. But when you look at the overall glute fullness, when we look at the upper glute area of Alice, and we look at the upper glute area of Abby, we look at all these keys, the waistline width, the shoulder width, right? The shoulder to waist ratio. Alice is pretty much winning on all those besides the depth of the tie-in. So I think that that's where she can get a little bit better, is getting that tie-in to be just a little bit more. I think that her conditioning could have been a tiny bit better this time. Not too much. Both of them have good hamstrings. They're not separating. They're not creating that separation line of those like deep roping hamstrings or anything like that. But her tie-in is a little bit better. And I think that might be what it came down to at that. Now, I will say when I first saw Alice, and I love Alice. She's a super nice girl. She's just a great person, great competitor. But her posing, her very first show that I saw her pro debut, was nowhere where it should be for a pro show. She's been working with Phoebe, and her posing is significantly better than it was. Usually I would look at these two and I would be like, okay, it was Alice's posing. Her posing's not there, right? But her posing is better now, and it's good enough to edge her out in this scenario because she's clearly, physique-wise, to me, it's a no-brainer that she beats her in physique from front and from back. From the back, I could see a little bit of an argument, but it's such a knockout of the park from the front. I don't see how they can come to the conclusion of her getting edged out. So maybe it was a 1-point decision and her posing was still a little off. I don't know exactly what happened with the posing routine, but that one to me is a little bit of a miss, and I think Alice should have ended up with third there. So, and now we look at Ashlyn Little, the winner of the show. I mean, it's such a clear and obvious win for Ashlyn here. I will say this is Ashlyn's best look that I've seen her have for at least a couple years, which is scary going into the Olympia. Already looking like this, we're at 6 weeks out this week going into the Olympia, and she is bringing some heat. I will say that. There's honestly not much here at all that I would say to improve on. I mean, it is pretty much exactly where she should be. I honestly think she walked out and the judges were like, done. Like it happens sometimes when their girls are so good, you just walk out, the judges are like, all right, yeah, she's done. Like she's won. I've seen them do that a couple of times with Ashley, where she walked out, they put her in the middle, and then they just put her all the way to the edge, and they're like, and I was like, what happened, guys? They're like, don't worry, like just you're fine. Like and then she wins the perfect score, and then at the end of the show, they're like, guys, they're like, she won so clearly that there was not even a point of comparing. We were just comparing second and third. And I was like, you guys are scaring me. So this is, I think, one of those scenarios. It is such a clear, obvious win from everything, from the hamstring tie-ins, from the glute tie-ins, from the hamstrings not separating, from the shoulder to waist ratio, from the conditioning being exactly where it should be, but not too much, from the quads being developed, but not overly developed. I've been talking about this year. She is bringing what we call pretty muscle. She's not overly developed. She's not overly grainy. She's not overly capped off. She's muscular. You see her in person, you're like, damn, that girl's got a lot of muscle. But look at how it presents, right? She's got full upper outer edges of her glutes. I mean, everything is there. She's hitting it. She's hitting all the bases that she needs to hit. She's actually hitting. So this is pretty scary for her going to Olympia looking like this. And I think a lot of girls are probably taking note. I got more than probably 5 messages saying, do you see Ashlyn? Do you think that's her best? I would say yes, that is her best. It's her best that it's ever been. So what I want to do is go into detail about Ashlyn and Brittany and why I'm saying it's such a clear walk away winner. You know, these judges, this is a good quality show. This is a high level show, and there's some quality judges that are going to be at this show, and they're going to be able to spot these little things. So let's look at these details when we talk about the graininess and the shoulder detail. Okay, I'm going to pull these up. So one, you know, Brittany, remember, Brittany is a taller, bigger competitor. She's got a bigger structure than Ashlyn, so of course she's going to be a little bit bigger. There's no that is definitely part of it. But let's zoom in closely and look at what I'm talking about with the difference of shoulder detail. Okay, so when we talk about shoulder detail on Brittany being a little bit too much, look at the depth of that shoulder capping, and then look at the depth of Ashlyn's shoulder capping. Right. It is significantly different on the depth of those two, significantly. And so that's where I think it's hurting her. She's just a little bit too shouldery. They say they don't want shoulder caps in bikini. If you look up the actual rules in bikini, it says no capping, right? Obviously, they don't follow the rules 100% of the time. If that was the rule, Brittany wouldn't even place second because they're allowing some shoulder capping. That is shoulder capping for sure. But you see how Ashlyn has just a kiss of that detail. It's not a deep crevice, that graininess, and you have Brittany with that full crevice of detail where it's the muscles are fully in depth, and you can see those kind of striations in between the muscles. And when you move, you get that kind of grainy movement in the shoulder. That's where the difference comes in, and the overall size. And now we jump to Texas at the San Antonio Pro with the winner, Alexandria Ross. I was so happy that Alexandria won. Alexandria is my buddy, and I wanted her to win so bad the last show too. And she really came through this time. She tightened up. She did what she needed to do. But let's take a look at the list here. So here's the thing. At this show, we had a lot of talk going into this show because there was no top 10 Olympians. You know, at the Hurricane Pro, it was kind of like, oh, Ashlyn's going to win that. It's going to probably be between Ashlyn and Brittany. We all kind of knew that. At this show, there was a lot of like, what could possibly happen, right? Because we had Lana going in, you had Liana going in, and then you had Alexandria. And I was like, well, if Alexandria tightens up, she is the highest ranked competitor out of those competitors. If she tightens up a little bit, she could win it. If Lana tightens up just a hair and maybe make some small maneuvers to her posing, she can probably take out Alexandria. If Liana shows up exactly how they want her, she could win it, right? But everyone was kind of talking about this, and everyone was saying, Lana, Liana, who's going to win? And I was like, why are you guys sleeping on Alexandria? She's the highest ranked one there. She just need to tighten up a little bit, and she probably would have this. And then you also had KAYLIN, who's had a lot of momentum. Now, let's go ahead and go into the physiques of why Alexandria ended up winning this show, which I was super, super happy about. Now, when I saw Alexandria in Vegas, it wasn't the Alexandria I know. It looks like she just had some stage rust, and I talked about that in the last video. She wasn't like her comfortable, bouncy self. Like she was kind of more reserved or kind of like just not feeling it maybe. I don't know what was going on that day. But on this day, she really knocked it out of the park. She nailed her posing. Her conditioning was right on point, and she brought exactly what she needed to. She was the star of the show. And that's the Alexandria we know, you know, owning the stage, having the confidence, coming out with and nailing her poses without thinking about it, that type of thing. That's the Alexandria we know. Everyone has those shows, you know. We just did a podcast, and Ashley said she had that a couple years ago at the Clash, where she just kind of just wasn't feeling it and didn't nail her posing. Everyone's going to have those shows. You do enough of them, it's going to happen, you know. And I think that Vegas show where I saw her, that was one of them. Her conditioning wasn't as on as it should have been either. And so this is what I really wanted to see from her, because she has such an amazing look, such an amazing structure. She nailed it. Her lines are there. Clear winner on this show. I do think it was close, though, between her and Lana. I do think that there's still a little bit of improvements to go on Alexandria for her to fully peak out this physique, even though she won. I would like to see in today's bikini world, I would like to see her having just a little bit more in that upper outer edge of the glute here. You could see a little bit of that fall off of that glute not being super full there. I would like to see a little bit more detail in the tie-in without seeing any more detail in the hamstring, which are already just slightly starting to separate. So just a little bit more overall size in those glutes. And honestly, just a kiss of more detail in the shoulders, and she's going to be there. She does really well in the black suit. Me personally, I've never had a girl do well in a black suit. I think she's the only one I've seen do well in a black suit since India Paulina. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I don't know if the suit color is helping her or hurting her. It does look good on her with her black hair and her black suit. It's a different look, I'll give her that. But those black stones, they don't reflect any light. It is a good, decent contrast, but it's not like pop, So I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. I don't take the risk with black suits. I have a kind of a 6-color rule, which are all bright poppy colors. And I've just never been successful in it, but she seems to find success in it. So good for her. So now let's go to our other black suit girl, Liana, who everyone thought was going to be battling it out with Lana at this show. And it was actually a bit of a surprise. She got 7th place here. She's been doing really, really good, even at big shows. This year, she did really well at the Pittsburgh Pro. So even doing these bigger shows, I think that was her pro debut, and she came out with a bang, made a first call out, and she's kind of been the talk of the town for this year, but hasn't been able to lock up that pro win. So I was hoping that, she could get a pro win this year. She's running out of time now. She's got a very poppy physique. That's the thing about her is like you look at her and she has really, really good flow to her physique, but it's a lot of physique too. It's a lot of muscle, it's a lot of density. And that's the things that sometimes it's going to help her and sometimes it's going to hurt her. If the girls show up to the show and let's say there's 10 girls that are really good at the show, but they're not as dense and not as sharp, and they don't have that like strong of muscle, that dense muscle, she's going to really stand out in a negative way. Now, if you're at a show where there's a lot of dense girls, a lot of hard girls, she's going to stand out in a positive way. So she's always going to kind of fluctuate up and down until she finds that perfect look for her physique. She's going to have these moments where she's up and she's down and she's up and she's down. Now, I don't know what they're doing at their camp in terms of trying to fine tune her, but she has brought in a little bit of a softer level of conditioning that she brought before, which I honestly think is right. I think it's the right move for her. But the issue that you run into with her is from the front, she does have a little bit wider of a waist from that front pose. When she hits that front walk, she's just a tiny bit wider. She looks like she has some high iliac crests here that sit a little bit high, which make her waistline just a little bit wider than some of these girls that are more petite, like when you run into a Alexandria, for example. She's going to look a lot bigger next to her. So a couple of things that it's going to be hard to fine tune her physique because you want to bring her in lean to bring her in as small as possible, but she's so dense that when you bring her in lean, she looks a little bit too muscular and too powerful. So I could see the problems that they have. I've had these problems with girls too. I actually just did a video on one of my athletes that I'm bringing into a show now a little bit softer and taking that approach too, which I think is the right move. So I think the direction that they're going is a right move. Maybe they went a little bit too far this time, and that's what cost them the placements. When I look at her from the back pose, I'm not seeing the tie-ins the way I'd like to see the tie-ins. From the front pose, I think that her conditioning is right on point in the waistline. I think it's exactly where it needs to be, but it is kind of a harder physique to work with because she has the tie-ins aren't exactly where I'd like them to be at this show. But you already see detail and separation in the quads here, and you see the density and the hardness to the muscle from the front. Now, it's a hard thing to balance, but once they nail it, she's going to be winning shows left and right. I honestly think it's going to take her till 2023 to really do that. I think somewhere in the April timeframe, she's going to start hitting her stride and finding that perfect balance of conditioning and honestly, not just conditioning, but posing too. How hard she pushes in that back pose to show those tie-ins versus the front pose. One of the things you might want to do is just soften her up just a little bit more, but push harder in the back pose so she can match her back tie-ins and still have not so much density in the front. But how do you do that with having the smaller waistline, right? Well, maybe she has to pose a little bit more profile and turn her shoulders over more to create the illusion of a smaller waistline. Maybe spend less time walking in that front walk to create her waistline illusion of not being so blocky, not making it so obvious, right? So there's all these little things you can do, and it's going to take some fine-tuning to really find that perfect formula for her success. But she is on the right path. I do agree with what they're doing. They're trying different looks. If you look at her at like Pittsburgh, she was super hard. If you look at her this time, she's a little bit softer, not soft by any means, but she just has one of those physiques. It's kind of like when we look at bodybuilding and they're trying to figure out like Big Ramy, bad example, but he was a big bodybuilder that could never hit his conditioning. They're like, man, if he could ever put it together and one day he sacrificed size to nail his conditioning and he knocked it out of the park, won 2 Mr. Olympias, right? Maybe that's a scenario for her where you sacrifice a little size. Maybe she doesn't come in as full. Maybe it's all posing, but they're trying new things. They're still doing well. And I agree with the method. Personally, I would rather fail miserably and try something new than keep getting second place. I am all about that. And I think that hats off to her for trying new things, coming in softer, trying different approaches, because you could see her body fluctuating from show to show. It's not, I highly doubt it's that they're doing it on accident. I really think that they're trying to just try new looks, get feedback, try new looks, get in front of judges. Second place, why? You know, go for first. I'd rather go too far in one direction and figure out and know why. Okay, she's too soft and you placed her 10th. Okay, I guess we went too far. What if we go in the middle of that? Okay, let's try again. Let's try harder. Let's try a different approach. Let's go too hard. Oh, you got 7th this time again? Let's go a little softer, right? So at least we know the parameters, because what you're going to do is you're going to go too hard, too soft, too hard, too soft. You're going to find that perfect balance. No, ideally, yeah, in a perfect world, you'd hit it right in the middle, but that's easier said than done. I wish I could knock it out of the park every time right in the middle, but it's easier said than done, and I do think she has a harder physique to work with because she is different from the front and from the back, and so it's going to take some fine-tuning, maybe with the right posing coach and an expert eye posing coach, so they can really figure out, just at least get the posing part down, where it's not that her poses aren't right. It's said that maybe she should push harder. Maybe she should turn more profile. Maybe she should turn more shoulders based on her conditioning, and also based on the girls that are showing up to the show that day. If you know you're going up against a Lana and an Alexandria, a DeAnna, who was a little bit of a softer, more petite bikini girl, versus a, Brittany Hamilton, right? That's going to be a different approach, right? If she's going against a Brittany, she can show that muscle, right? Because Brittany's going to be a front runner. She can pose a little harder that day. If she's going against an Alexandria, a DeAnna, a Lana, yeah, you're probably not going to want to pose as hard because they're more of that softer, smaller bikini girl, right? So different scenarios for different girls, and I think there's just an education process and a learning process for her. That's what I have with Liana. Again, amazing physique. I think she's going to go very far in the very near future, but I do think it's going to be next year. And, depending on how the points go and how people do the next few shows, she might even get to the Olympia this year based on points. So she is in the race for it. And I don't know if, this weekend, Alexandria moving up out of the points and now into the Olympia qualified might have bumped her up. We're still waiting for those standings to come out, and we'll see how that goes. But she's had a great rookie year. Hasn't got a pro win yet, but Lana's in the same boat. Lana's I think a little bit higher on the points list right now. And I think everyone's just going through those last things they need to do to get ready for that, to get qualified for the Olympia. The cutoff is really close here, and there's not much more you can do. So shout out to her, but I do think next year is where she gets into the Olympia, and next year is where she hits her stride. I could see her winning 2-3 shows next year in the right circumstance if she fixed those things. Now we're going to go into KAYLIN again. Recently we talked about KAYLIN, so I'm not going to go too far into her. Again, I said she has some of the best lines. I think she has the best lines of any rookie that came out this year in terms of her overall structure, but she probably has the smallest amount of muscle out of any rookie pro that came out this year too. So I think, again, with her, all she needs to do is fill out her frame a little bit more, build a little bit muscle, and that's just someone you're not going to be able to compete against. It's going to be like, how do you out-structure her? You can't out-structure her, but right now you can out-muscle her. And I think that is the only reason that she's not winning shows yet, but she's doing well. But she's doing well at shows where there's not any breakout stars, right? If there was 4 stars in this show or 4 Olympia qualified people in this show, she would probably be in the lower bracket because of the amount of muscle that she has. There was no one at this show that was already Olympia qualified. So she's moving up in the ranks. I do still think the best thing for her to do is to take some time off, build up her physique, and to just crush it next year, starting somewhere in that May, June timeframe, and really going after shows. But she needs to fill out her physique a little bit more. Not going to be able to do it going from show to show and putting on a lot of muscle. So I think that it's highly unlikely she's going to get Olympia qualified in the next show. So it just makes sense. Hey, let's just hang it up for a little while. Let's make sure that you're undeniable at your next show, and you just hit everyone with the wow somewhere in that June timeframe with literally like 4 pounds more muscle, and she'll be there. But structurally, that girl is a lot of problems for girls seeing her right now. She is going to be a big problem for everyone on the pro scene once she gets her frame a little more built out. Right now, she's competing based on structure. She has what I would call, a girl trying to get a pro card type of amount of muscle, not a pro level amount of muscle. Her structure did it for her, and now she's at the pro league, and it's another level of muscle, right? So I think she just needs a little bit more, and she'll be there. 6 months, 8 months of hard lifting, and boom, she's winning pro shows left and right. Mark my words on that. She's going to be winning pro shows left and right when she gets that frame filled out. And now we're going to go into Lana. Lana was one of the favorites going into this show. Her finishing second next to Alexandria was, I'm sure, a little bit of a battle. It was no surprise to me. I did think that if Alexandria tightened up enough that she would be the one to beat that day. Lana looks fantastic. I think that she is really an amazing physique. I love her flow. I love her beauty. Her lines are great. A couple of things that were off on her. Her tan was a little bit off. You could see there's just some splotchiness to her tan. It wasn't her best tan. Her conditioning was good, but not great. And I think that that's the last little thing for her is just getting her conditioning just a little bit tighter, having her tie-ins show up just a little bit more. And then the other thing is when you get next to these really good girls that are, full upper glutes and full roundness and full tie-ins, your holes are gonna be a little bit more obvious. Now, when you look at her from the back, she has a little bit more glute development to grow on that upper outer edge of the glute. Look at the tie-in; it could be a little bit deeper. I don't know if she really needs a lot more development on her tie-in per se, but her conditioning could be better to make that show a little bit better. So that, and then her waistline, I think she could probably still knock off probably a 1/2 inch to 1 inch on her waistline tops if she had her conditioning a little bit better. So you could see her lower back, just a tiny bit of softness, So, I think that on points, she's probably going to get to the Olympia, but when she gets next to those Olympia level girls, these holes will be exposed a little bit more. So when she's getting momentum and everyone's talking about the shows coming up and how she's going to do, right now, if in the right scenario, she might win one of these smaller shows. But you get her next to one of these top 10, top 15, 20, even 20 Olympia girls, and she's going to show a lot of holes really quickly. And that's what Alexandria did this weekend, So I think that with her, with a little bit more muscle, with Lana, a little bit more muscle, a little bit better conditioning, a little bit more fullness to her glutes, she could be in that group, though. I think that she could be a top 15 Olympian. She's got the lines for it, the beauty for it, the structure for it. I think she needs to fine-tune her posing a little bit still and tone it down a tiny bit. I think that everything else is just, nailing it. If she nailed her tan this time, she nailed her conditioning just a little bit better, got a little bit more development. And I think she'll get in this year because she's competed a lot and she's been consistent in that top 5. But when you get in a sea of, 70 Olympians this year, she's going to fade a little bit. And I think next year could be the year where she could really start doing damage if she fills out those key areas. And then she'll be really, she'll be up there, And the thing is, you're going to see people like KAYLIN with her structure just pass her along the way, though. Because structurally, KAYLIN already has the upper glute fullness, already has a smaller waistline. But she's getting dwarfed in the muscle. And so this is a good lesson for both of them. One, don't let anyone pass you. If you're Lana, start working on those glutes, the goal right now is to get to the Olympia, but what happens when you're at the Olympia, right? Or, if you're not, so for me, if a girl's not ready to get in the top 10 of the Olympia, to me, it's like, what's the point of going, right? Let's get you good enough to be competitive at the big shows, not just try to get there, right? So everyone has their own way of doing it. That's just my way. And I think that next year, if she takes some time on those glutes, and really brings that conditioning in hard and fine-tunes the posing just a little bit, that she would definitely be someone that can get in that top 15 groupings. So this year, if she gets there, I don't think she's going to be in that top 20, So, but shout out to her. She's an amazing year, beautiful person. I was lucky enough to go to dinner with all of them. This is just me doing my commentary behind it, and I always want to be honest about it, even with my own girls, which I've said are too grainy sometimes. But amazing potential out of her, amazing potential out of KAYLIN. There was another girl that I wanted to go into that had a really good potential is DEANNA Dang. So DEANNA Dang is a former Miss USA, and look at those crazy lines on DEANNA. Crazy lines. Tiny waistline, great lats. Like her lats and her lats kind of have that Issa look to her, right? Where she has a real big V taper to the top. But she does need more overall muscle, more overall size. So when you look at the show, so let's look at the top. So everyone's like, how did Liana do so bad, right? Let's look at the top girls. You have Alexandria, more of that bikini, softer, more petite bikini girl, right? You have Lana, who's got second, who's not overly hard, not overly jacked or developed. You're not seeing any crazy striations or anything like that. More of that bikini, softer bikini fitness model look, right? You have KAYLIN, who's in that top group, who's, again, probably a little bit too small to win a pro show right now, right? Softer bikini lines. You have DEANNA, again, a little bit smaller, a little bit softer bikini lines. Yeah, when you're Liana going in a grouping of girls like that, you're going to get pushed down because you look too muscular next to them, right? If you put this group of girls and you put Brittany in that group of girls too, Brittany would probably also be pushed down because she'd be too muscular for that day. She would dwarf everyone, right? So remember I've talked about this before, is you want to be kind of right there with the girls that are next to you. You don't want to be too much of anything. You want to be kind of right in the middle. And I think that is, you know, when you start looking at these girls, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. She was really muscular compared to those 4 girls, right? And those 4 of the top 5 girls. So now looking at DEANNA, she has such crazy lines. Like her tie-ins are deep tie-ins, but she still doesn't have a overly powerful physique. She doesn't have that much muscle. It's not like this crazy, crazy muscle. A little bit of muscle on her in the legs, a little bit more muscle on the glutes and in the shoulders, and that physique can go really far. But she is what I call, you know, an ectomorph type of body structure, that smaller body structure. And she's got a good amount of muscle for her small body structure, but the lines are so good. Structurally, not as good as KAYLIN, but structurally really, really high level. So I think if she just fills out her frame and gets those tie-ins, those deep, long tie-ins a little bit better, that she'll be right there. So she was lucky. I was lucky enough to meet her. She came in and she was posing with my wife here at the prep center. And her posing, I think, is spot on. Just needs a little bit more muscle for her to start moving up. But those lines and those like deep tie-ins with that V-taper shape, I think can go really far. But yeah, 5 more pounds of muscle probably for her to really hang in the pro league. And then you'll really start seeing her climb. But structurally, again, really, really high level girl. So anyway, that is my wrap up of the 2 shows. That was a long one. Thanks for sticking around. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if you disagree with me in the comments. Write in all capital letters. You suck as a commentator. Oh, well, you listened all the way through. I appreciate that. Remember, contest prep online worldwide, teamelitephysique.com. Adam's out.